What's up, everyone? In this video, I'm going to start putting the CR250 engine back together. I'm just getting everything cleaned up right now, so I'll show you what I'm kind of doing just to get the case halves cleaned up a little bit. So the bench is a little messy here. I'm starting to get a couple of bags together there. I'm going left and right. I'm just putting the bearings in them, and then I'm going to throw them outside. And it's probably, I don't know, minus 15 or so, so the bearings should shrink pretty good. So I'm using my Dremel tool with a little Scotch-Brite wheel on the end of it. You can order these at Amazon. I'll link them down below in the description. They're doing a pretty good job on the cases. So they're coming out pretty good. So they're pretty brilliant looking. So I'm pretty happy with the progress I'm making on them. So when that's all done and I've got the bearings outside, I'm gonna start putting the bearings in the case half. I still have this one to do, but this one is pretty well done. That looks pretty good to me. So like I said, when I get the bearings I'm getting the bearings out now, and I'm gonna split them into two bags, right case, left case, and I'm gonna throw them outside like I said. And then when the case halves are done being cleaned, hopefully these will be cold enough and I can start throwing the bearings back in. I've got the cases all cleaned up to where I want them now. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to put the bearings in. So I've got the left hand and the right hand bearings segregated from each other. This is actually the right hand case. So because one bearing goes the opposite way than the other ones, I'm going to use this bolt and this washer. And when I put this bearing in, I'm going to use the washer to keep the bearing in. So I'm going to put the washer down and just make sure it doesn't go anywhere and drop out while I install the other ones, because I'm going to have to flip the whole thing around. So I'm just going to snug it in there nice and loose just to keep the bearing in. But other than that, I'm going to go out and get that bearing and then put it in. So I'm just going to install these so that I can put all the lettering in so that I can see it. So the next bearing will be the shift drum bearing, which basically just popped right in there for me, so that's perfect. And when you're putting these bearings in, you want to make sure the little seal is on the facing out. You want this side in because you want the bearings to get oil on them. So this is basically like a dust seal, and that's should be all open just to let oil in there. Help. You want to tap these in nice and even. And you want to make sure they're seated, so you look on the other side here and make sure there's no gap at all. And there isn't there, so that should be well seated in there. And you want to spin your bearings, make sure they're spinning nice and freely. If they don't, if there's a little bit of grinding or something in there, don't panic. Just make sure that all the ball bearings are free of debris, because sometimes you can get this or that inside the bearing track. So just give them a good clean with brake clean and keep working it around and see if it smoothens up for you. Since I had a little bit of trouble with the first bearing going in here, I'm gonna just make sure the main bearing goes in properly, and I'm gonna use some heat, and I'm gonna heat up the case a little bit and just make sure it goes in okay. Again, I'll be putting the bearing in, lettering in. So I'm just going to make double sure that that's in there. And it feels really good. So it seems like these this side bearings went in really well. So now I'll go on to the other side there. So I just put a little bit of assembly lube on all these bearings. Just it's something you want to use in the Maxima assembly lube. So it's just something you want to kind of do. If you don't have Maxima assembly lube, just use the whatever transmission oil you're going to be using, and then that should lubricate the bearings enough to get you going on startup without damaging anything. So when you get all these bearings in, right here on the shift drum bearing, you want to make sure that you put these little keepers back in, these little tabs. So they'll go right here, just to make sure the bearing stays in, because this bearing actually falls out quite easily. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of blue Loctite on them. I'm sure they have a torque spec, but I'm sure it's small enough torque spec that I don't have a wrench that'll do it. So I'll just tighten them in pretty good. Whatever, you can do it by feel. So that feels pretty good there. Just a slight torque is fine. I'm sure it's only like 8 foot-pounds or something like that, so it won't take much. So with those snugged in now, so now I can put this case aside. This case is done, and I can move on to do the other bearings in the other case. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the bearings in on this side. I'm going to heat up this side of the case and put the bearings in, and then this side of the case and put that bearing in there. I guess I'll throw a little edit in before I start this process. This bearing has a little groove machined into the top of it, so that needs to be facing up so these little tabs can go in, and you know, that's to keep the bearing from falling out. So I'll put this in just before I do this. All right, so I got all the bearings in there now. Everything went in really smooth. Everything's turning nice and easy. That's the shift drum bearing there. That's turning good. And all these bearings, these guys are all turning pretty good. Nice and easy. So I'm gonna wait till this cools down and then put these little screws in for the retainers. And you always want to put a little bit of blue Loctite on those. While I'm waiting for the cases to cool down there, I'm gonna put the seals in for the water pump. So how this goes is this seal here, the big seal, or the bigger of the two. So that's gonna go with the spring facing this way, because that has to seal. All the coolant's gonna be right in here, going in and out. Pumping in and out. So this has to seal coolant from going in this way. So there's a little weep hole right here. I'll see if I can, if you can see, oh crap, where is it? There it is. If you can see that little hole there. So if you ever see coolant coming out of that hole, that means that this seal has failed, because it's got a little cutout here. So if any coolant gets past there, it goes out of this hole. So again, the seal is going to go spring side out towards the coolant pump side. So I'll just put a little grease on it and push it in. I might have to go grab a socket, we'll see. Press it in there. You want to push it down until it's flush with the casing. I'll just use the blunt end of this extension here. That should do. Can also look on the other side and see if it's seated all the way. Alright, well that's pretty well flush with the housing here. So now you just flip it over, and this is going to be the oil side. So there's going to be oil splashing around in here. This is where the clutch is spinning. So this seal right here is going to go the other way. So the spring is going to be going this way, in this way towards the case. So it seals the engine oil in. And I would say it's the same thing if you have your transmission oil coming out that hole. I'd say that means this seal failed. So that one recesses a little bit. So now the bearing, you got to be careful with these ones because these bearings, they don't really need to be cooled or heated or anything like that. They just kind of go in there. And what I might do is just give it a little tiny tap with the hammer, just to make sure it's seated. So it's sticking out just a tiny bit, but it feels like it's seated onto the case there. So, and it's spinning nice and freely. Again, put a little bit of assembly lube in just to make sure there's lubrication in when it starts up. Alright, so these case halves are cool enough to Loctite these little screws and put them back in now. So what I'll do is I'll just put them in with the screwdriver, and then I'll get a little bit and just use this just to torque on it a little bit. So with that all done and it cooled down enough, now you can go ahead and put a little bit more assembly lube in there. So what I'm doing here is just going through both the transmission shafts and making sure I have everything here. So I've got the OEM manual up on Rocky Mountain ATV, and I'm just going through everything, making sure I got everything here. So I've come this far with these, and there's a little snap ring right here. I'm not going to bother taking that off. I'll just go the other way with these gears. So I had both transmission shafts apart, the main shaft and the counter shaft. Looks like everything's here, so that's great. So now it's just going to be a matter of giving them a quick wash and then putting everything back on the bike. I've got the right hand crank on the bench here now, so I've had the crankshaft out in the cold outside for a few hours, so it's probably cold enough to slip in there nice and easily. So I don't have the seal in yet, so I'm going to put the seal in after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with the heat gun and then go get the crank from outside and see if that'll slip in. All right, so that dropped in lickety split just like that, so that worked out perfect. The next thing is I'm going to put this in the stand, and then I'm going to start probably putting the shafts back into it. So the next step is work the main shaft and the counter shaft back into the bearings there. So you want to put them together and work them in like that, just like you see here. You work them both in just like that, and be careful because there's washers. So you got to try and keep that washer on there until you get that shaft lined up with the hole. Might be a little tricky. You got to keep these together too, so. But you do have to put these in definitely together. You just spin them around. Till the teeth mesh together, and then you should be good to go. So next I'm going to put in the shifting linkage. So that'll be the shift drum and the shifting forks and the shafts that they slide on. So you're going to want, it doesn't matter which side you start on, but you just want to make sure that the pins for the drum are facing in towards the drum. So the drum will sit here, and you want these pins facing in towards the drum. So on this side, you're going to have two shifting forks. On this side, you're just going to have the one shifting fork. So these shifting forks have 4R on them and WL. So that tells you which side of the case they're going to be on. So this is the right hand side of the case. So the first one that's going to go in is the 4R. So that'll go on the bottom on this side into that little slot. There's a little slot there. And then the next one to go on top of it will be the WL, and that'll go in the next slot up here. And like I said, make sure these pins are facing in towards where the shift drum is going to be. You can move them out of the way a little bit, be easier. And this one here is the opposite. The 4C actually faces down because that pin has to face in towards the shift drum there. So you just put that in, slide it over like that. You leave your shafts out for now because when you put the shift drum in, it's going to be a lot easier to install. So you put it into your bearing, and this top one is going to go in the top slot here. And the second one down is going to go in the bottom slot down there. And this one here is going to go in the middle one here. And just so you know, when you put these two shafts in, don't try and spin them without this stuff in there. This is going to bind up. So you might think you have a problem. You don't. Try putting your all your shifting stuff in first before you try and spin these shafts. Then you'll really find out if you have an issue or not. So now you put the one shaft in over here, and there. You can feel it seat all the way. Make sure it seats in there all the way. And then you put the left-hand one in. There it is. So now you should be able to spin these freely. So now you can hold this one here, and now it should spin independent, and everything should be good. So now you've got all your shifting linkage in. So now you can kind of go through the gears a little bit. So now I'm going to take this off the stand because I'm going to transfer it back onto the bench, because now you can start getting ready to put the two halves together. So now that I've got all the guts of the transmission in here, now I can put the other side of the case on. So first of all, I'll probably put in the dowel pins, which it's a good idea to never seize. But I see in, most people's videos, they never seize the pins themselves. I do the bores just because it's so messy to, never seize the pins and have to handle the pins, and then it's everywhere. But if you never seize the bores, then you don't have to worry about handling it. And then after that, I'm going to put a light coat of grease around here, and then I'll put this O-ring in, and then I'll put the gasket on. And then after that, it's time to pull the other case half on. Right, so before you flip your case half over and try and pull it on, you want to make sure you've got the dowel pins, and you want to put never seize probably in the bores. You can put them on the dowel pins if you want, it doesn't matter. Make sure you got your gasket on, make sure you got your little O-ring here, and I put grease all the way around, because we all make mistakes sometimes, so there could be a chance I might have to pull this off, and it's really going to help if I do forget to do something and pull it off, and it won't stick to the case or anything like that at first. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll still seal oil in and everything, but it'll just help you if you got to pull it off. So this is a definite must-have tool here, this Tusk crank puller installer. I'll put a link to where you can get it there. This thing worked incredible. So you just install it onto here, and it just pulled the whole case down onto the other case. So it couldn't have worked better. So next step is I got a mess of OEM bolts that I ordered, so I've got to go through those, and then I'll start just installing them around here. These are just some bolts that I had left over from my bolt kits. So now that we got the case halves together, now we're going to start putting all the shift linkage back in. So first thing to go in is this little retaining arm. So you put a little bit of Loctite on it and just kind of snug it in by hand. I'm sure there's a torque spec, but it's probably way too small for what my wrench can do. So it'll go in just like this. Put this in first, and then you'll be able to put the little detent in for the shift drum after. So you just want to snug it down. You don't want to tighten it too much. It's only an aluminum case. So after that, you can put the outer part of the shift drum in where all the detents are. So you want to take this piece here, and you want to line it up with the that little piece there, the little pin. Might be a little bit difficult. I'm gonna pull it right out of the way and get it in there. I think it went in. So I think that's in there. So that should be neutral. I'm just going to check and make sure I've got it in properly here. So this little line right here, when it's lined up with the wheel, that should be neutral. So to know if you're neutral, you hold this shaft still, you should be able to, and spin this one. So I got the shift drum center bolt torqued to 20 pounds. It's supposed to be 16, but 20 is the lowest my torque wrench goes, so a couple extra pounds probably not going to hurt. So next step is going to be getting this whole assembly on here. It's going to be a little bit tricky because you have to do this. You have to put this all together with everything under spring tension for these pawls. So that might be a bit of a pain. So you can't really screw these pawls up because they only go in one way, so they're going to line up with these holes. So if you got it in the proper one, it's going to line up. So you have to put the spring and cap assembly, or whatever you want to call it, in like that on both sides. Be doing this off camera, sorry. So with all that put together like that, you got to try and keep it together and get it through this plate. And then when you get it through the plate, you got to get it into the shift drum assembly there. So it's a bit of a thing. So it's a bit of a thing to do. So you get all this plate together at once, and then you want to check inside and make sure you got the pawls in correctly. And then you just tighten all these bolts down. These are all just 10 mil. So before I tighten all these down, I'm just going to put the shifter through, the shift shaft through, and then just make sure that we're shifting properly. I'll just snug these down for the time being. And then don't forget this little piece there. So my phone ran out of battery there and died, so sorry about that. But I got all the shift linkage in, so this is what it's supposed to look like. That little shift pawl in there, you basically have to, it's tough to explain. You have to put the pawls on either side and keep them squished and put it through this plate and feed it into the shift drum at the same time. So that's a bit of a process, but after that you get these bolts in, and then you put that little piece in, and then you put your shift shaft through, just like that, and you push that through. And so that'll be in there just like that. So I'm in neutral right now, so you'll want to put your shifter on after and just check all the gears. I did that while my phone was dead there, and it all worked. So I guess I'm gonna have to charge my phone for the night and probably finish this in the morning. So next up is going to be the Kickstarter assembly. So first you start by putting this bolt in here. So you're gonna put it in just like this. It's got a little tab here to line up, and then you put the bolt in. But I'm gonna Loctite that first. So when you've got the assembly together, the shaft's gonna go in here like this. This has to go in behind there like that. So this plate is so this little tab doesn't pop out of there. So when you put these together, you'll have your shaft, and then you put this little gear piece on. But I explained in the teardown video, there is a dot right there on the shaft on the top there, if you can see it, right there. And there's also a mark right there. So make sure that when your Kickstarter goes together, they are lined up like that, or you're not gonna be able to kickstart your bike very well. So then on the back of that goes the spring, and that's gonna go inside like that. So that tucks in there like that. So then this gear, these teeth are going to mesh with these teeth. And there's also a washer in here, so you got to make sure that that's there. And then you've got your little collar. So that little collar, you want to line up the holes right here for the spring. So this piece here, the slot, needs to line up with that, so you can get your spring on easier. And then slide your spring on. That little part of the spring goes in that little slot in the hole, just like that. And then you have a washer. So then this spring has to come over to this hole, and that'll create the tension needed. So now I'm just gonna grab my Kickstarter and I'm just gonna function it, see if it's working okay. Okay, so I got the Kickstarter on there, so I'll just kind of hold the spring in and just make sure it functions okay. So it'll catch. And then you got to hold the gear with your thumb or something, otherwise it'll just come back, because it's not being held by the idler gear right now. So you got to hold the gear with your thumb or something. You can even stuff something in there if you want it to. So that seems to be working just fine. So I got the spring tension right, because it's key to line those two dots up. So if you don't line those two dots up when you put them on, that's where you're gonna run into trouble as far as how much spring tension you get. So I've got the idler gear here now. When I took it apart, there's a rough side, and then there's a smooth machine side. So when I took it out, I just kept it exactly how it was. There's a little spacer in here, so you put the spacer on with this part in the back, because if you put it in like this with the gear installed, if you put it in like that, it's gonna rub against the it looks like it's gonna rub against the case, and you can hear it. It's rubbing against the case, so this has to be in the back to create that gap. So now it runs nice and smooth. There's no drag on the case. So that's how you know if you have that incorrectly. So now we'll put the gear onto the this is coming right off the crank. So this is the first stop after the crank as far as power flow goes. So this is not any kind of a timed gear. And make sure this raised part here goes in the back. So I'm going to put this bolt in just for now. just lightly. I'm waiting on a new clutch basket because this clutch is just, I could probably fix it, but I have a feeling the next time I put it in or whatever, it's just gonna be toast. So you can see all the markings, like this clutch is just worn, and if I fix that, it's just gonna be super thin. Like it's pretty well, I'm pretty well gonna be into this groove here. If I file all those off, I'll pretty well be right into here. So it's time for me to get a new clutch basket. So I'm gonna just order a brand new OEM one. I'll probably put this in just to keep everything together for now and keep everything in loose. But other than that, I'm definitely just gonna go ahead and order another clutch cover, but I'll put it in just to show for installation purposes. So don't forget there is a washer, and that goes right here. It goes in behind here onto the inner clutch hub. I'll move the camera a little bit. Let's see if we can see the clutch a little better. So when you put these in, there's a collar and there's a needle bearing. And then this gear here is going to mesh with this gear, and this gear here is going to mesh with this gear. So this is what drives this, and this is what drives this to get the engine going. So, oh wow, yeah, there you go. So there's I never noticed this, there's a reason right there to replace the clutch. I've never seen play like that before. Possibly it's normal, but I doubt it. So that means this clutch is really wearing out, I think. So let's put that in there for now. Should be able to work it in there. Might need to, there you go. Might need to move the gears around a little bit, but then it should just drop right in for you. So I'm gonna put everything in, all the guts in, just so I can lock it in place temporarily. So next is going to be the inner clutch hub. So that's where this washer comes in. So from what I gather, there's a bit of a rounded side and there's a flat side on the back here. The rounded side goes out, as far as I know. So then this will just line up right on the splines. And then you try and, I'm gonna try and put my clutch pack in here just to keep it out of the way off the bench or whatever. So with that all together, you want to put on, there's a locking plate that goes right here. That's gonna be new, I'm gonna order a new one of those. And then a washer, and then the nut. So this nut you wanna tighten on. You want to tighten on before you put all this clutch in, because there's a clutch holding tool and you can't use it with the plates in the way. So you put that clutch holding tool on and then you torque it down. But I'm not going to be torquing it today just because I'm taking it right apart. So don't forget your push rod, and then can't remember what this is called, but this is what the push rod pushes on to push out the pressure plate. And then the pressure plate. Then you got your springs. So what I'll do now is just tighten them in. Just snugging them. So I'm going to want to be able to pull these fairly easily. So I think I'm going to back out this bolt just so I know that it's not torqued, just so I keep it out nice and loose, just so I remind myself that I haven't torqued that yet, because you got to jam the gears up or something to torque this. When you put the water pump in, you start by, there's a little washer right here. You got to make sure you put that in first, and then you can go ahead and put this gear in. And that crank gear, the main crank gear, behind here, you can't see it. You got to make sure the teeth mesh with that. And then you just put that right in there like so. And then you can go ahead and slide over your cover, which I'm not going to put a gasket on, because like I keep saying, I'm going to, this is all coming apart again, so. Then you'll have another washer go on here, crush washer. And then the water pump itself, the turbine. But like I said, this is all coming apart again, so I'll just keep all this snug for now, just to keep it together. So after that, I'll just show you quickly. So after that, I'm not going to put it on. You'll have a gasket, and then the gasket will be on there, and then you put the plate on over the gasket, and then another gasket, which is stuck to this cover. And then after that, that's when you can go ahead and put your cover on. So that'll go on just like that. So now I've moved on to the stator side. I can go ahead and finish this up, but before you put your stator back in, don't forget to put your little clutch link in. So that you want to just put some oil or some grease on it or something. So it'll slide into that new seal nice and easy. And you want to be gentle with these, because they do have little sharp edges, so just put it into the seal real nice. Alright, so it's got it seated now. So now you can go ahead and put the stator in. So just go ahead and put that right in there. You want to check this little pulse generator right here. You just want to check it, make sure it hasn't been, when I did the 80, the flywheel had been going around and hitting the pulse generator, so it wore out, so I had to buy a new one. This one looks like it's in good shape, so it's just something you might want to check before you put that in there. Slide the rubber in as you do this. I'm starting to think I don't have the seal in all the way, so I'll push that in a little bit more. It's not seating all the way in there. Let's see if it goes in a little better. Definitely wasn't sitting flush against the case, so that's not good. So that's what you want right there. It's flush against the case there now. In fact, I might just push it in. It's got a little bit of variance. I might push that in a little bit more. That feels good there. Use a little bit of Loctite on these. Because if this bolt does back out and this stator backs out at all, the flywheel is gonna tear it to bits. And you're gonna know it very shortly after. Just snug them in. They don't need much. So now you can put your flywheel on, but before you do that, you want to get the keyway lined up here. And you want to put the half moon key in there. Might need a little tool or something, a set of pliers or something. So looking back, there's probably something I could have did before I put the stator on, but oh well. And I just put it in the up position just so it's easiest to see. Okay. You do want to double check and make sure you do have it lined up there for when you torque it. There we go. Yeah, that key is in there definitely. So you want to make sure that's lined up before you start torquing on this thing. And there's a washer there, so make sure that goes in, and then the nut. So I've got to figure out the torque for this, and I've got to figure out some way to back this up because I don't have the tool for that. So the torque spec for this nut is 40 foot-pounds. And make sure you go and buy the tool for this. Tusk makes one. It's for the clutch and for this. I'll link it in the description. I don't have it. I really wish I did buy it right now. I kind of overlooked it. So this is going to be probably quite awkward. So I'm just putting a couple of bolts in here to bind on the flywheel. But I got to be very careful. I don't want to put the bolts in too far, and I don't want them grinding in on the stator. So I got to be really careful doing this. If this is too awkward, I'll probably just hit it quick with an impact and call it good. But we'll see how this goes. Those threads aren't quite tight enough in there, so I'm not going to risk it. That should be fine. So yeah, if you do this job, make sure you buy that tool. That would make life a lot easier. So next I'm just going to put the cover on to just try and keep the dust out of it. I'm not going to put the gasket or anything in there because I have to go in here again and put the clutch cable in. All right, so I got the engine about as done as far as I can go. I got it out on the bench now, so that's a really good sign. So now I'm just gonna be waiting for some parts there. I'm gonna order them right now, and I'm gonna get the clutch and the clutch discs and a few other things. And so I'll have to wait for that before I do anything else. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you want to see this thing go into the bike on the next video and the bikes start going back together, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell if you want to see this 250 go back together. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.